Okay, so welcome back. In this video, I thought I would take a look at developing a calculator application in C# in using Visual Studio in Windows. And I got kind of interested in this, and I'm doing another video talking about calculators. And I found an application for Android phones, which is an absolutely wonderful scientific calculator you can use on your phone. And I got kind of interested in what it takes to develop a calculator application in Windows. So what I've done here is I'm starting to look at one of the more challenging aspects of developing a calculator application. And in this video, I'm not going to talk about setting it up in Windows Forums or WPF, how to drag and drop the buttons and the event handlers and all that. But we're going to instead look at how do you take the user input, which, coming from a text box, you have to grab a string of user input, which is the equation that they need to solve. How do you take that text string and convert it into something that you can do a mathematical calculation on? So I'm going to go through the procedure I use to be able to do that, and it's really not too bad. I was a bit surprised. I saw a C# video talking about developing a calculator application, and the approach was very, very complex, and I was kind of scratching my head. Is it really that difficult? So I kind of went off and looked at it on my own and came up with what I think is a fairly simple, straightforward methodology for evaluating a string of text as a equation. So what we're going to do is make believe we've got a little, this is the Windows calculator. We're going to make believe we've got a little simple calculator like this, and the user is going to enter a number into the text box, and we're going to grab that text and perform the calculation. So what I've done here is I've got a C# Windows console application. Here's my main program. And it's basically, I've got some regions here, which I've got some basic operations, and I've also got a static class of string helper methods, and we'll talk about that. But basically, what I'm going to do is, you see this, the first line of my main application is, I've got a string which presumably I've grabbed from a text box, and it's 5.6 plus 0.045 divided by 3 minus 8. So we have to take that string and figure out how to convert it into something and perform calculations on it and get the right answer. So let's see what the right answer should be. So I've got the calculation. I've got 5.6 plus 0.45 divided by 3 minus 8. And the answer should be something like minus 6.118. So I'm not doing the correct operator precedence where you would normally go to the divide by first, but I'm just doing it from left to right. But I think the method I'm using makes that fairly simple to check for operator precedence. So we should be getting an answer for this is minus 6.118. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this and see what we get. Okay, so here is the results of my application, and what I've done is I've printed out some of the intermediate steps, and the answer is minus 6.118, and you can see from the calculator that's the correct answer. So what I've done is I've taken on the first line, I've just taken I printed out a copy of the original string, the incoming string for our calculator. And then what I've done, if you think about what you need to do to turn this into something you can operate on, well, the first thing you're going to want to do is probably get rid of these spaces, okay? So the spaces are useless, so my first step was to get rid of spaces, and then I've got this string here, which is without the spaces. So then what are we going to want to do? Well, we've got this. It would be nice if we could separate the numbers and maybe put them into an array, because once we've got these numbers separated out into substrings, we can put them into an array and then we can have access to the numbers themselves. So what I've done next is I have made a value array, and the contents are basically the numbers in the equation: 5.6, 0.045, 3, and 8. So I've gotten rid of the operators and just put these as individual elements in an array. And then what you want to do is you want to convert that array from strings into doubles. So then you've got the actual numbers, and it becomes a little bit easier to, you know what the numbers are, that they're doubles, and you can operate on them. Then the next thing I've done is I've made a separate operator array. So I've taken from this initial string, I've extracted out the 3 operators that are in this particular equation and put them into an array, okay? So now I've got an array of doubles which reflect each of the values you want to operate on, and an operator array of characters that has, in order, the characters representing the operators you want to use. And that's important because if you think about it, if we're going from left to right in this equation, the first operation you want to do corresponds to the first operator in the operator array, okay? So you go to the first operator in the operator array and say, okay, I need to add. What do I need to add? Well, you need to add the first value to the second value. So we know what those are. So now it becomes very simple. We say, okay, first value, second value with the first operator. And the second operator is going to be the result of that plus this next value. And the third operator is going to be the result of that plus this last value. So if you've got these 2 arrays, it becomes fairly simple to just loop through each value in the operator array and do that operation on the equivalent values in the value array. Okay? So let me go through what I've done. Now we talked about we're going to need to parse this. So what I've done is, again, in this static class, I've got some helper methods. And I've got 3 helper methods. Let me get rid of this guy. I've got one method that takes in a string and removes all the spaces. Okay, pretty simple. And to do that, I'm using regular expressions, or regex. And I need to do a using system.text.regularExpressions. And this is what you use to remove all the spaces with nothing. Now, I despise regular expressions. They're very complex, but once you've got them, you can make little helper methods like this. So there is a replace method where you have the input string, which is coming in, and then you use this bit of annoying equation to say all of the spaces, convert them into this, which is a nothing, all right? It's an empty. So I'm taking this in, I'm looking for all of the spaces and converting those to this, all right? So pretty straightforward. Again, regular expressions are annoying, but once you've got it, you can make a little method like this. Well, now we've got all the spaces removed, so we've got another method here, which is separate by operators, and that extracts the numbers from the string. And there is a character method or string method called split, and you basically feed it a list like this of all the things that you want to use as pointers for where you want to create substrings. All right, so what we're saying is the separators are the characters that separate the substrings. So everything on either side of any of these will be a substring that we're going to put into a string array. all right? And it's really simple. I take my string that I'm going to operate on, and I split it, and I use this separator's string array, and it basically just puts all of the values into a string array. So now I go back to my main method, and I have called this separate by operators, and I've got a string list of values. So that's my list of the numbers in string form. And then what I want to do is convert that array to doubles. And there's a very simple array method called convert all. And I put in the input string list of values, and I parse it into doubles. And that gives me a double array, and it's called the double list of values. So now I have an array that has just the values inside this text, inside this equation. It's got them as doubles. Now, the last thing I need to do is get a similar array with just the operators. So I go back here, and I've got a third method which basically removes all of the numbers from the string and all of the decimals, okay? And again, it's regular expression. I use a replace, and it takes the string 1 in, and this says remove all the decimals and replace them with nothing. And this does the same thing. It takes that answer, puts it in here, and says replace all the periods, all the decimal points, with nothing. So it removes all the numbers and all the decimals, and then takes that and converts it into an array of characters, okay? So now when I come out of here, I've got a character array, which is a list of operators, okay? So if we run it, as you can recall, the value array is just the numbers, the operator array is just the operators, and then we're all set. We've got the two arrays, and all we need to do is step through those arrays and do the correct operation. So now basically I just have a for loop, and what the for loop does is it steps through the array list of operators, and for each operator it determines what the operator is using this switch and case statement, and depending on what the operator is, it will do the correct operation. So for example, the first, in our equation, the first operator is a plus, okay? So in that case, if it's a plus, we're going through the list of operators, so the 0th list of operator is a plus. And since this is true, the answer is the 0th value plus the first value, or 0 plus 1 value. If not, it's the 0th value divided by the 0 plus 1 value, and so on, okay? So it does the first operator, and it figures out what the answer is. Then it goes to the second operator, which in our case was a divide, and it will come down here and divide the answer that you previously got by the next value, and so on. So anyway, that's about it for this. I think it's pretty straightforward, and now that you've got the operator arrays, you can selectively jump. If you want to do operator precedence, you can jump to the right operator. For example, you can jump to this divide by operator and calculate that first, and you can do whatever you want. Now, one thing I want to mention, if you're not aware with this console.writeLine, if you want to change this, you can go up to this bar on the top and right-click and go to Properties, and you can set the font. I've cranked up the font here so it's a little bit easier to use, and you can change the size of the window and the placement and all that. So just so you know. So anyway, I hope that helps. Take care and have a really good day. Thanks.